Hey, welcome to Think Thursday from the Alcohol Minimalist Podcast. Think Thursday is all about your beautiful, brilliant human brain. We're talking neuroscience. We're talking behavior change. We are talking about your mindset. Are you ready to get started? Let's go. Hey there, welcome to Think Thursday from the Alcohol Minimalist. Have you ever stayed up later than you meant to, even though you knew exactly how tired you would be the next morning? In that moment, tomorrow you is practically begging for help. She would really appreciate it if you turned off the television, put down the book, or stopped scrolling and went to bed. You know she exists. You know she has to live with the decision, and somehow she still loses the argument. We postpone a task that would make tomorrow easier. We spend money we are meant to save. We skip something today that matters to a goal we care about because the payoff feels far too away. Then we explain the choice by saying we lacked discipline, motivation, or willpower. But there may be something else happening. The person who receives the immediate reward feels completely real, while the person who receives the future reward can feel surprisingly distant. And that's what we're talking about on today's episode, why your future self can sometimes feel more like a stranger than a continuation of who you are right now, how that distance affects the decisions you make, and how building a stronger connection with your future self can help you make choices that support the life you want without simply demanding more willpower from yourself. Let's begin with a concept called temporal discounting. Temporal discounting is our tendency to value a reward less when we have to wait for it. Imagine being offered $50 today or $60 several months from now. Even though the later amount is larger, many people feel a strong pull toward the money that is available immediately. Bird in the hand versus bird in the bush, right? Two in the bush. I think that's the way it goes. That makes sense when you think about it. The future always contains some uncertainty. A reward available today is tangible, while a future reward is still hypothetical. But temporal discounting doesn't only appear in research studies involving money. It shows up whenever a small reward now competes with a more meaningful reward later. The relief of avoiding a difficult task is available now. The satisfaction of completing it comes later. The comfort of staying on the couch is immediate, while the benefits of moving your body develop gradually. Even when we understand which choice supports the life we want, the brain gives extra weight to what is close, visible, and available. This is one reason information alone rarely changes behavior. And I want you to hear me say that again. This is one reason that information alone rarely changes behavior. So if you've been sitting around listening and listening and listening to this podcast or anybody else's podcast, or reading and reading and reading a lot of books, taking in a lot of information, that is valuable, but it is not the only piece to behavior change. Knowing what would benefit us later doesn't automatically make that benefit feel emotionally important now. Psychologist Hal Hershfield has spent several years studying the relationship people have with their future selves. In one brain imaging study, participants were asked to think about their current selves, their future selves, and other people. The research suggested that for some participants, thinking about their future selves produced brain activity that looked more like thinking about another person than thinking about themselves. That is fascinating because most of us assume we experience our identity as one kind of continuous line. We know that we were a child in our old photographs. We know that we are the person living our life today. And we understand intellectually that we will be the older person living in our body years from now. But understanding that logically doesn't necessarily mean we feel emotionally connected to that future person. Researchers use the term future self continuity to describe how connected you feel to the person you will become. When that continuity is strong, your future self feels like you. Her needs matter because you recognize that you will eventually be the one experiencing them. When that connection is weaker, future you can feel more like someone else entirely. Someone whose needs you care about, of course, but perhaps not with the same urgency you feel toward the person sitting here right now. Hirschfield and his colleagues found that people who felt a stronger connection to their future selves were more often willing to wait for larger future rewards. And that led the researchers to explore whether they could make the future self feel more vivid. In one group of studies, people were shown age-progressed images of themselves. Rather than imagining an abstract older person who might exist decades from now, participants could see a version of their own face looking back at them. After interacting with those images, participants showed more interest in allocating resources toward their future. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking, wow, AI has an opportunity right there. That is amazing. The image didn't magically give them more discipline. It simply made an abstract person feel more concrete. The future stopped being a vague place where some imaginary older person would eventually deal with the consequences of today's decisions. There was a face attached to that future, and the face was their own. Now, future self-continuity doesn't mean believing that you will never change. Your future self may have different circumstances, priorities, interests, or opinions. Hopefully, she will have learned some things that you don't know yet. Feeling connected to her simply means recognizing that her life is not separate from yours. It is the continuation of the life you are living today. When that connection is weak, decisions can begin to feel like a negotiation between unrelated people. Present you gets the reward. Future you pays the bill. Present you gets the relief of postponing the uncomfortable task. Future you inherits the deadline. Present you stays awake for one more episode, and future you has to get through the next morning on less sleep. And present you can make a very convincing case. I'm too tired tonight. I'll feel more motivated tomorrow. I'll have more time next week. The problem is not that those thoughts are always false, but sometimes rest really is the wisest choice. Sometimes today is genuinely not the right time. The problem arises when future you becomes the person who is endlessly expected to absorb the consequences. She'll find the time. She'll have more energy. She'll know what to do. Apparently, future you is an extraordinary woman. She has limitless motivation, an empty calendar, and no desire to procrastinate. Except, of course, future you eventually becomes present you, and she arrives with the same human brain, the same 24 hours, and whatever support or unfinished business you handed her. That realization can sound a little harsh if we turn it into another reason to criticize ourselves, but that isn't the goal. Present you matters too. Healthy behavior change is not a contest in which the present must always lose so the future can win. You don't have to sacrifice every pleasure today in the name of becoming a better person tomorrow. That creates a life that feels like it's always on hold. Instead, think of this as a relationship in which both versions of you deserve consideration. Sometimes the kindest choice is to enjoy the evening and allow tomorrow to be a little less efficient. Sometimes the kindest choice is to spend 10 minutes preparing something that will make tomorrow easier. The question is not, what should I force myself to do? A more useful question might be, how do I want to treat the person who will wake up inside this life tomorrow? That changes the emotional tone of the decision. You are no longer obeying a rule for the sake of being good. You are doing something considerate for someone you care about. Researchers have also studied something called episodic future thinking. That means imagining a specific future experience in enough detail that it begins to feel more real. Rather than thinking, I should exercise because it will be good for me in the future, you might picture yourself walking back through the door afterward and noticing that your mind feels clearer. Instead of thinking, I need to get organized, you might picture yourself tomorrow morning looking for what you need and feeling relieved that it is already waiting beside the door. Studies suggest that vividly imagining a future event can reduce the tendency to overvalue an immediate reward. The word specific matters here. Someday me has no schedule, no feelings, and no immediate needs. Tomorrow morning me standing in the kitchen at 7:15 is easier to picture. So is Friday afternoon me, opening a document and discovering that I already wrote the first paragraph. You can use that idea with a simple practice that we'll call the future self handoff. Choose one moment in the near future, not 10 years from now. Think about tomorrow, later this week, or next time you know you'll be facing a particular decision. Picture yourself entering that moment. Where are you? What are you trying to do? What would make that experience slightly easier? Then make one small handoff. Put the item you need beside the door. Write down the next step so you don't have to figure it out again. Prepare one part of tomorrow's breakfast. Make the decision now so your tired brain doesn't have to remake it later. The action should be small enough that it feels like a gift, not a punishment. You aren't trying to control every detail of the future. You're simply leaving behind a little support. The future is not built only through dramatic decisions. Much of the relationship you have with your future self is created through tiny steps. You leave her just a little bit of clarity. She gives you a little more trust. You make her morning easier, and she becomes more willing to believe that the promises you make today mean something. Over time, you begin to experience yourself as one person moving through time rather than a succession of people handing problems to one another. Of course, you will still make decisions that future you does not appreciate. You'll stay up late, you'll postpone something important, you'll make a choice that feels good in the moment and wonder the next day what you were thinking. That doesn't mean the relationship is broken. It simply means you're human. The answer is not to use your future self as another source of shame. The answer is to reconnect. You might say, that decision created a harder morning. What could I hand off differently tonight? Curiosity keeps that relationship open. Shame makes us avoid looking at the consequences of our choices. So this week, notice when you are asking future you to carry something. Not so you can stop doing that completely, because every life involves trade-offs. There will always be times when tomorrow has to handle something today couldn't finish. The goal is simply to make the decision more conscious. Then choose one moment when you can bring the future a little closer. Picture the person who will receive the outcome of what you do today and offer her one small act of consideration. Your future self isn't a stranger who will arrive one day and take over your life. She is already here, quietly taking shape through the decisions you make and the care you are willing to extend beyond this exact moment. You don't have to become perfectly disciplined to make better long-term choices. Sometimes you simply need to remember who you are making them for. That's all I have for you today. Until next time, choose peace, and I will see you on Monday.